Hey everybody, this is Andy Johnson coming back at you from Mojotone with our Deluxe Reverb build we have here, AB763 Reverb, fantastic amp. But in the last video I went over some of the general principles of putting tube sockets in and how those go in, as well as your tube retainers. What I'm going to hit upon here is actually I have all the pots in. I have my pilot light in down here, and I'm going to show you up close little things, make life a little bit easier on you. I have two of the jacks in the front in place, but they're not tight. And the only reason I didn't tighten them down was because I was using them as a reference to make sure everything lines up before I tighten down on the actual pots themselves, because I like to do these jacks outside of the chassis, because the way the chassis is, this is angled back about 65 degrees. And it's very difficult to get to the bottom of the chassis to put the 1 meg resistor in, which you'll see later on. But if you notice, all the pots are in the same orientation, all the values are correct in the proper locations, and you notice that all the solder lugs are facing up. I wish you could see that. There we go. Okay, and think about the reason for that is very simple. The reason for the lugs being up here, the solder lugs, especially with the bias pot, as well as the switches, fuse holder, and jacks, as well as the reverb and vibrato in, out, and foot switches back here. Think about things how you would want them to be 10 years down the road if you need to go service this thing. And what's the easiest way to do it? Well, if you can make everything easily accessible from the top, that you don't need to go in and put your soldering iron in, because you'll see once the wiring is in here, it gets pretty complicated, and the less you move things around, the better off you're always going to be. Just something, especially in vintage amps, just something as simple as moving a wire on can create this huge hassle that you need to track down, and could result in pulling the board out or pulling your cat pan out the bottom, trying to figure out what happened, because they do break off. So to minimize that, try to make everything as easily accessible, for servicing the amp. And even if you don't service it, somebody else does, they'll certainly appreciate what you've done with that, because if you were to put the solder lugs underneath, I've seen a lot of people do it, it's a pain. And they'll turn the jacks a certain way, so you have to get up under the jack, because these two jacks jump out, as well as the input jacks. It gets really tight in there. Okay, so that's why these look the way they do. The pots do. Now, moving down to the pilot light, the Blackfaces, I've seen them installed from the factory. If you notice, there's a bracket here to the left of this. I actually mounted it horizontally, not vertically. If you mount it vertically, which is fine, sometimes you'll actually contact the bias supply board up here. Okay, so you're going to try to keep away from that. And later on, I think, I don't know if it happened to be that individual builder that day or whatever, but I have seen these in 67 and later, actually pretty much all year. I've seen them turn on their side like this, which made a lot of sense. And one cool thing about these, this is an actual aircraft part that Fender used, and we still get this from an aircraft company for lights on the dash and things like that, which is really cool. It's an American-made part. But keep in mind that these two solder strips on the back, the solder tabs that are sticking out, let's see if you can get up in that. Sorry, I got a new light, it's a little bright. I'll move here. I don't know if you can see that or not. But there's two different solder tabs coming off of that, and they move, they rotate. So in this position, if you want easier access, all you need to do is hold the frame itself and then rotate the tabs up. This needs a little bit of force, but you can do it, and it makes it a little bit easier accessible, and you won't be touching anything over here, which is really cool. Okay, now moving on to the back panel, what we have here is your ground switch, fuse, power, standby, main output for the combo speaker, extension output, your vibrato pedal, reverb pedal connection, reverb in and out right here. Okay, now again, you want these to be easily accessible. If you notice, the tabs, and Fender did the same thing, all the solder tabs are facing up except the ground switch. We are not going to be connecting the ground switch, and I went over the reason why in the last video. We just have it there as a placeholder, and it looks historically correct, even though it won't really do anything. But again, all the solder tabs are up. Now when you get your fuse holder, the fuse holder is actually keyed. You'll notice that it's a D-type hole think they call it D-type hole. It'll only go in, you know, either up or down. You want to make sure that this tab that you see right here on top of this fuse holder is facing up. And from the manufacturer, for ease of installation and getting the holder actually into the hole, it's flush against the body of the fuse. And all you need to do is take your fingernail and raise that up slightly, and there you go. You can easily access, you know, your fuse holder there. And when I put the fuse holder in, also, I'll go ahead and put the fuse in, just so I know it's there, because I'm notorious for losing fuses everywhere. Okay. Now, okay, so I also have our bias pot, 10K bias pot in, and our grommets for our choke, output transformer, filter cap board here, and our reverb driver here. So you have 6 or 5 total. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5 total. Six total grommets. Sorry, to get those in. All right, and that's a good overview of how these jacks and switches and everything goes in. Okay. Another thing I want to hit on is a lot of people have a hard time understanding this. We like to use the J12A jacks. I believe they're J12. I'm correcting myself now. We'll see here. Those are the, yeah, J12A. Okay. And what that means is basically it's a switching jack. And if you notice on this, again, it's bright light, sorry, there's a third tab right in here. This is your positive terminal, and you notice on fenders, if you made it this far, you probably worked on a fender before, so you already know that the sleeve is automatically grounded via this tab right here to the actual chassis itself, which is very convenient because you can actually use this as a grounding point for various components in the chassis. But if you notice, this is what they call a normally closed switch, and what that means is that when you connect the ground, you jump the ground over from here to here. When you disconnect the actual amp, of course, when you put a 1/4-inch jack in there for the speaker, you'll notice that when it opens up that switch. Let me see, it's very slight, but it does open up that switch. And when it closes, or when you take the plug out or accidentally rip it out or whatever, it closes that circuit. And what it does is it takes that signal from the output transformer. You know, just in case you're cranking it in a club one time and your drunk drummer goes crazy and wants to quit and runs past your amp while you're jamming, and automatically, you know, pulls out the speaker, extension speaker jack or whatever. This will save your amp. And what that does is it takes that signal that's coming through that should be going to the speaker, because the speaker's loading up, and we're talking about low voltage, high current. What this does is when this switch shorts out together, when the switch closes, it takes that signal and shunts it directly to ground temporarily. What that does is it prevents the secondary winding of your output transformer loading up, becoming basically a capacitor, and the energy has to go somewhere, and where it goes is usually to the wire or the coil right next to it, so it will short out and you kill your output transformer. This acts as a shock absorber for that, and I think almost every amp manufacturer is using this now in one form or another. Marshall has the same thing. Of course, there's our Cliff jacks that are plastic, but the Switchcraft jacks are, you know, these things are very robust and they're good for 10,000 cycles or, you know, what have you. So again, another American-made product. So very happy with that. But that's a J12A. Now the other one is the J11, which is a standard jack, which is on the extension speaker jack right here. So you can tell the difference. The J12As have 3, if you can see that, have 3 solder lugs, and the J11 right next to it, this one here, has 2. A positive and a negative, or the tip and ground, as you want to call it. Now, again, and I can't emphasize this enough, that when you put these jacks in, the Switchcraft jacks, it was very smart the way Fender did it. They're automatically grounded to the chassis. They usually use the lock washer behind the pots and behind the jacks and behind the, not so much the switches, but you know, and that dug into the actual metal of the amp, providing a ground. So they would use these as unified grounds for different circuits of the amp, so they didn't have to spend an extra 10 cents on a terminal strip or a ground tab or, you know, what have you. But of course, back then, like I said in the earlier video, they did have those brass shield plates here, which nowadays are really not needed. Okay, so that is almost all of our hardware installation. Our next installation, what I'm going to do is the power transformer, the choke, the output transformer, and the reverb driver. And once I get that done, we'll come back and talk about it.